everyone. I'm Dr. Lissa Rankin. I'm working on a new book called Relationsick about the health implications of unbalanced relationships and particularly narcissistic abuse. And I also wrote Mind Over Medicine and Sacred Medicine and 5 other books. But anyway, I'm so delighted to be here with you. And I'm starting this YouTube channel because I want to start offering a different kind of support for people who are on a relational recovery journey. Because as a medical doctor, I've been studying now for over 15 years kind of the mind, body, spirit impacts on the physical body of people's relationships. And we know very clearly that positive, healthy, loving, supportive, co-regulating relationships that help our nervous system settle into the ventral vagal aspect of the parasympathetic nervous system, the tend and befriend aspect of the nervous system. These kinds of relationships are absolutely medicine for the body. And there's tons of good scientific data. I spelled it all out in Mind Over Medicine, backing that up, that these kinds of healthy, intimate, supportive, loving relationships are good for the body. Likewise, toxic relationships, abusive relationships, relationships that are unbalanced, lacking in reciprocity, such that one person is always caregiving and the other person is always care receiving. These relationships are not so great on the body. And I found in my integrative medicine practice that this is definitely something that a lot of people don't want to talk about. They want to say, give me a pill, doctor, or this is a chemical imbalance in my body, or something's off with my hormones. And they don't necessarily want to face head on the reality that their medical problem might be a marital problem, or that they might be having physical health issues because they're still enmeshed with a narcissistic parent or a narcissistic spouse, or they're being taken advantage of and exploited by a narcissistic boss or by a cult leader that is labor trafficking them, for example. And the body cannot handle this. No matter how much we think we are tolerating it and we are expanding ourselves, or we are good, generous, spiritual people who can love unconditionally, even if somebody is treating us very poorly, the body knows that this is not safe. And the nervous system winds up in a chronically dysregulated state in either hyperarousal, which is the sympathetic fight or flight, or the dorsal vagal parasympathetic, which is the sort of collapsed freeze or fawn, dissociated state of the nervous system. So the sympathetic is unhealthy, but at least there's a benefit to it in that it helps us fight somebody who's mistreating us or run away from somebody who's mistreating us. And the freeze and fawn is actually the worst impact on the body, when we're just dissociated and checked out and the abuse continues because we're not even protesting. So I'm going to be talking to you about some of these relational dynamics on this YouTube channel. And we're going to talk about relational trauma, starting in sort of childhood development, when our developmental phases were interrupted, either because we had a narcissistic parent or a neglectful parent or an abandoning parent, or in some way we didn't get the good enough attachment experiences to help develop our nervous systems in a way that the ventral vagal aspect of the nervous system gets normally myelinated and develops nervous system tone, so that we actually are wired to like ventral vagal connection. When we're socially engaged, our hearts are open, we feel safe, we feel trusting, we like being around other people, even if we're introverted, even if we maybe are not the classic extrovert, we still have a small circle of inner circle people that we can relax our nervous systems and reach out to others when we're in stressful times. And that is very preventive medicine for the physical body. And there's really no substitute for that. We can absolutely tend to ourselves using internal family systems. We can bond and create secure attachment between our wise, divine adult self and our wounded inner children. And we can help to develop relationships with the protective parts of ourselves that were survival strategies that helped us survive childhood and can actually interfere with our relationships in adulthood. And those attachments on the inside are extremely important. And they can't replace being able to have other people that we go to. We need both. We need the self to parts connections, and we need connections with other safe enough people. But unfortunately, trauma gets in the way and interferes with our relational compass, and especially for people with disorganized attachment, which is a combination of avoidant attachment and anxious attachment that develops when our caregivers were categorically unsafe, when we were terrified of the people that we had to rely on to survive. With disorganized attachment, the safety danger compass actually winds up 180 degrees off, so that we feel safe with unsafe people. We trust untrustworthy people. And then we actually will feel scared and threatened by safe, trustworthy people who are actually available for intimacy. So this, of course, sets us up to repeat these dynamics over and over, to create these traumatic reenactments that can just create chaos for the body. And that chronic nervous system dysregulation can kind of turn off the body's natural self-healing mechanisms. The body is made to heal. We make cancer cells every day that we fight. We're exposed to pathogens that we don't get sick from. We have proteins that break down. We have cell death, and we have a way of sort of cleaning out the old cells and bringing in new cells, and lots of natural self-repair mechanisms in the body. But in order to do that, we need to be in the ventral vagal aspect of the nervous system, or the healthy dorsal vagal, like when we're sleeping or when we're resting and breastfeeding, connecting, things like that. So that those healthy states of the parasympathetic nervous system are what allow the body to stop fighting a threat and to start fighting the threats that can impact the body. When we don't have enough nervous system regulation because we don't have safe enough relationships, the backlog of things that need to be repaired just becomes too strong, too much, too many insults to the body to keep up with repair. And this is when we can get sick with things that doctors might not be able to cure, either because they're sort of chronic conditions, or Western medicine hasn't necessarily caught up to know how to treat trauma-related, nervous system dysregulation-related illnesses. The treatment really is to stop the insults from the traumatic events, from the unhealthy relationships, from the things that are causing the nervous system to fire off. And then when we can surround ourselves with safer people, to have communities of practice, communities of healing, places where there's no spiritual bypassing going on, where we can actually feel our feelings and be held and co-regulated and learn to be with our feelings. This is where healing begins to be possible. And I'm writing a new book called Relationsick with my partner, Jeffrey Rediger. I've been studying radical remission, people who are cured from incurable illnesses, since long before my mind over medicine days, over 15 years now that I've been working with people who had unusual recoveries. And my partner, Jeffrey Rediger, spent over 20 years studying the same kind of research very rigorously. And he wrote his book, Cured, and I wrote my book, Mind Over Medicine and Sacred Medicine, about this. And when we first met 6 years ago at a trauma conference that we were both keynoting, we sat there all day on a Native American reservation near Santa Fe, kind of giving each other the brain dump of what we had learned. And the one thing that we kept finding over and over was that the people who had radical remissions were often in oppressive relational dynamics, whether it was an oppressive marriage or an oppressive work environment or an oppressive family that they were still enmeshed with, or they were living in a cult. And they claimed that one of many factors usually that led to their radical remission was changing the way that they showed up in their relationships, that they were no longer going to be a doormat, that they no longer were people pleasing and compliant and automatically just fawning the people that were oppressing them. That they actually, when faced with a chronic or life-threatening illness, that a part of them like rose up like a tiger and was just, grrr, you know, my life is worth saving. My body is worth giving it the opportunity to heal. My heart is worth protecting. And one of Jeff's clients called it the Selfish Bitch Project. So we're writing about that story of Sophia in Relationsick. And Sophia said she had to kind of trick herself into being selfish, because that's how her parts interpreted it, was that protecting herself was being selfish, even though that's not selfish. To have self-protection, to have self-care, to have self-compassion. But because of her religious indoctrination, it was all backwards in her head. And so she had to trick herself into believing that she had to be selfish for a while so she could get cured, so she could continue caregiving everybody else. And she had a radical remission without conventional medical treatment, and never really expected that was going to be the outcome. She thought she was going to die. She just was trying to do her repair work, her recovery work, her trauma healing as a way to sort of help herself go out gently. So it was a big surprise. And of course, not everybody has that outcome. But part of what Jeff and I both have found is that the one thing that many people have not even thought of to try to improve their health outcome is changing how they show up in relationships. So in Relationsick, we have part 1 of the book is going to be laying out, making a case for how relationships, what is the science, what is the psychology, how do we explain the link between relational trauma and physical disease. And then part 2 is kind of the treatment. So in this YouTube channel, I'm going to be starting to explore some of these topics with you all and give you some practical tips and lead you through some IFS practices, lead you through some other nervous system regulation practices, and generally help support anybody who feels like their relational trauma from childhood or relational trauma from a current difficult relationship or from a lifetime of challenging relationships might be related to their chronic illness or their mental illness or their relationship struggles. Because some of the people that wind up finding this information helpful, maybe you don't have a chronic illness yet, and then you'll be able to think of this as preventive medicine. So please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and if this kind of relational healing work is of interest to you, we offer an ongoing IFS community of practice for people in recovery from relational trauma, people struggling with issues around narcissism or codependence on either side of that, who are trying to heal. They're in relationship, or maybe you're single and don't have other relationships right now, but you're trying to do the part of relational recovery that's actually best done alone. And so we call that program Love School, and you're also invited to join us in Love School, which is you can find it at lissarankin.com. So thank you so much. Let me know how this landed with you, and please put your comments in the comments. I'll be following along and listening to what comes up so that I get ideas about what might help you in your next step. So please send this to anybody that you know that might have a chronic or life-threatening illness, who might not have even thought, like, what? My relationships are related to my illness? And how come my doctor has never said that to me? And what do I do about it? So thank you very much. It's been Lissa Rankin. A pleasure to be here with you today.